Alright, let's make some more videos, shall we? This seems to be a running habit of mine, and I do apologize, but so long as enough videos are made, and you have the opportunity to watch them for multiple days, I would say that is still a plus. Even if they ain't the best quality, and I do apologize for that. But let's talk about why cases must be looked at directly. Now, when I'm talking cases here, I'm referring to criminal cases or the things that would be brought before a court. So, when a trial occurs, either a judge or a jury will decide the verdict and the sentencing, and those are two separate things for a individual facing trial. For example, someone may have a manslaughter conviction and are confirmed guilty for that in the verdict, but they still need a specific sentencing which can be changed based on other circumstantial things. So, for example, if this is your first offense, for most crimes you'll generally get off easier. If this is repeated, you'll get off harsher. And of course there are other factors in, like for example with murder, it depends on the aggravation and other such things. Now the exacts vary depending on the crime, local government, or country government, but the above is consistently true. So this is the case, however, exact circumstances surrounding the laws themselves, what you'll be facing, and the potential for sentencing and mitigating factors all depend on the local area. For example, in the US we have states who can have their own laws regarding things. The federal government has its own, and then how they enforce that based on local rulings is its own thing. But you will still face a judge or jury for trial. And with that comes a responsibility for the judge or the jury to look at the case honestly. So if you're a judge, let's say, in a country where judges decide cases, like for example Japan, and prosecution and defense present their evidence and say, here's what we got, it is your responsibility to look at that and the arguments made and decide from there what the best course of action would be. Are they innocent or are they guilty? And from there, what should the punishment be? For the US, with our jury trials, it's similar, but it's presented to the jury. The judge will oversee the court case itself, but they'll hand the evidence to the jury and basically tell them to deliberate and decide, okay, what should we decide on? What's the verdict? And once that's done, what's the sentence if the jury handle that as well? Again, everything depends very much on the specific government involved and the specific crime at hand. But those are the situations, and there is a responsibility to be honest about that situation. The reason things must be looked at directly is because the job of the individuals involved, whether it be jury or judge, is not to compensate the aggressor for poor circumstances, but to punish or reform the person depending on the severity of the crime if they are proven guilty. So if someone's just falsely accused, treat it honestly and say, okay, we do not believe this is a legitimate case, so we are going to say innocent because it doesn't look like they've provided enough evidence for us to convict. Okay, that works. But if it is the case that the person, by all evidence, seems to be guilty, then you should not argue on the basis of, for example, being born poor to justify either reducing the sentence or straight up denying the verdict. It does not matter if you feel bad about sentencing a poor person to death for murdering someone. If your laws say murder is a crime punishable by capital punishment, and the person is shown to commit said crime, then they should be judged accordingly. If you disagree with the death penalty, fine, people do. But when you're a juror or when you're a judge, that is not your job to decide. Your job is to decide whether or not the person committed the crime, and in such cases that you do handle sentencing, to decide what is appropriate per the law given the action. If there is a way to escape with just life sentencing and you want to do that, fine. But if it is murder is death, then yeah, if they committed murder, you're going to have to sentence them to death. Things like an unfortunate birth, early life, or other things that a defendant may claim or have been confirmed to have experienced do not matter unless they directly affect the case at hand. It does not matter if a person was born poorer than every single other of the 300 million people in the United States. It does not matter if they were in the poorest neighborhood in the United States. It does not matter if they got unlucky on multiple occasions. If they chose to commit a crime, then they chose to commit a crime. And unless those other things directly fed into the case that you are looking at, they are irrelevant, fundamentally. It should not matter, prince or pauper, who committed a crime. If the richest person on the planet murdered someone, they should be sentenced the same as someone who is as poor as the next guy. It does not matter. Or rather, it should not. And sometimes things do affect the case at hand. For example, if a person is poor and so work in a very dangerous neighborhood and get attacked, and that person who attacked them died, well, then that can play a role, because their poverty and the circumstances could very well make the case that it was self-defense, or that something else was going on. That plays a direct role in the case at hand. But it is not the fact that there's poverty that really is the key issue here, but rather the circumstances led to the actions following through. When it's a person's choice, though, those things don't matter, because you could be put in the worst circumstances possible, and you still commit the actions you commit. A cornered rat may do horrible things to try to escape and live, but it's still doing those actions, cornered or no. And so, you can still be judged according to those actions. And when it comes time to sentence, empathy must exist for the victims of these crimes, which people are looking at, and for the many people who are likely to suffer if evil goes unpunished. If a person can escape punishment for their crimes, then they're going to do the same thing again, because they can keep going again and again and again. And if they keep getting away with it, one, there is actually adrenaline rushes for doing things you're not supposed to, and two, it'll mean more people get harmed in the long run. These people will keep doing the evil that they commit, and that evil will get worse as it piles up victims. That cannot be allowed with any reason. But also, it means more victims, more people in pain, more suffering. And so you must have empathy for those victims. Yes, it's easy when the person you're staring at is the person being prosecuted, the aggressor in the circumstance, to say, I feel empathy for this person because I'm looking at them. That victim in the stands or off in the corner who doesn't want to talk about what happened to them is easier to ignore, but they still suffered. And we should still feel some empathy towards them, purely because they did not ask for this, and yet they suffered. The world ain't fair. The very fact that many crimes are committed is proof enough of that. But we can still feel that empathy and understand, yes, this person may have had an unfortunate upbringing. Yes, this person may have done this, this, and this, and still gotten screwed over. This person may have been born with bad people around them that influenced them. But they still hurt this person. They still hurt someone else because they felt like it. And that must be punished. It does not matter if you think you can avoid the situation that transpired in a case. You can think that you can avoid people like those, who injure others, who hurt others, who make the lives of others miserable. You can think that, but it doesn't matter, because someone couldn't, or didn't, and now they suffered because of it. All that matters is what did happen, what we have proof of, and the direct causes for that. What do we have proof happened, and what do we have proof for why it happened? Once we can construct the situation, we can judge it as the situation itself. And we can judge it directly, without any pretense of outside influences. Why? Because even if there were, those actions still happened. Those people still suffered, and someone still has to clean up that mess. I do not care if you're looking at a case and want to say, oh, well, that person experienced such a hard life, I don't want to punish them. Nor should you care if they did. Because, yes, while it sucks, while some people go through unfortunate things, you're not here to judge them for that. If you are the juror, that's not your role. If you are the judge, that is not your role. You cannot fix the countless things that went wrong in that person's life. What you can do is sentence them for what they did do, what you have proof of them doing. And if the evidence ain't there, simple, innocent, go. But if there is proof, if that person did do those things, and you can judge them because you're a juror or a judge, then do your job. It does not matter your emotional state. It does not matter how much you empathize with the person who committed the crime. They still did something wrong. They still need to be punished. And they still need to be treated as an individual thinking person who could have chosen not to do that. We must look at cases directly, because it's easy. It is very easy to make assumption on top of assumption on top of assumption to try to excuse any behavior we want, or to avoid responsibility for anything we can, or even to assume that others have the same moral codes and reflections as we do. But that simply isn't the case. And so we can't get caught up in that. We can't get caught up in constantly questioning the morality of everything. The law is the law. People get hurt, and in such cases where the law protects people from those who hurt them, we must decide what to be done with the person who perpetrated the evil. And that must be handled directly. I thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed.